Hello, good evening. As neutrally dressed as I can manage, a sort of bluish jacket and a reddish shirt, which sort of sets the scene. We're going to tick all the boxes. We're going to be beautifully balanced in the studio tonight when it comes to football and our teams here in Sheffield. Now, there's a lot more to the professional game than managers and players and chairmen and supporters, because between you, a supporter, and them, those players and that particular football club, there is a species called variously a press officer, a media manager, a communications executive, or maybe even a spin doctor. And we've got two of the finest with us this evening, Steve Chew, ex of Sheffield Wednesday, and Andy Pack, former Sheffield United. Gentlemen, it's great to put you under some pressure after you've put me under a little bit of pressure at times over the years when I've written something that the football club, not necessarily you, has thought was untoward. That did happen a couple of times, didn't it, Steve? I seem to remember.
Yeah, not just with you, but you know, as you know, and everyone knows, football is a highly pressurised environment. Journalists have got jobs to do in finding stories and reporting them, and they're not always the stories that the clubs want reported. So, yeah, but we had some good times as well. So
we certainly did, and very eventful times, and we'll come to those. Both of you have had eventful times. Spin doctor, I used that. In fact, on Twitter today, I said you were spin kings. Will you settle for that? Or are you offended by this spin description?
Only minorly. And people get labelled in whatever job they do anyway. It doesn't particularly bother me. I think what I was pleased about was the change from the name press officer to media manager, because I think that summed up more succinctly and more accurately what the likes of Steve and I did, because you are there to manage the media, but also to manage the club with regards to media as well. And I think media manager suggested to me that it was more of an in-between position that you had, where you were trying to serve both the club and the media, and that was the way that I approached it anyway.
Certainly agree with you, and I'll come on to Steve on that point as well, because press officer kind of implies, and I think in the early days of the role, when you guys got in the way of us doing our job, and I'll come to you on that in a bit, press officer kind of implied at some clubs, oh, it's somebody in there to put the match programme together, somebody in there to do the media and the website. But in fact, you know, it's far more important than that, isn't it, really?
yeah, it is. And I suppose I saw that, and Andy would have done, saw that evolve over the time I was at the club, because probably when I first started in 2000, Wednesday was still quite an old school club in the way it was run, and the managers as well. Two of my early managers were Peter Shreves and Terry Yorath, who, Terry, player in the 70s, Peter Shreves had been a First Division manager in the 80s, and I think back then, what the manager said went, and there was no, you didn't venture an opinion, you just did what the manager said. But over time, and I think certainly nowadays, particularly since I've left, football is much more, we need to say the right things to the media. We need help from experts, and so I think football clubs are a lot more aware of that nowadays.
We'll talk to you both about where you see your clubs these days, what you think about their fortunes and how they're doing. Because apart from sharing the same role and being opposite each other for many of the years, that you were in action, as it were, you're both supporters of the club that you work for. Aren't you? You're an owl and you're a blade.
Yeah, I think I bored you before with I was a blade in the womb on the cot, which was literally true. So I really didn't have any choice.
No. And how does that make you feel? Does it make you feel different about the job that you do when you're actually representing the team that you support?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably different to Andy in that before I took the job, I wasn't a Wednesdayite, but over 6-7 years of going to almost every game, and then being down in the dressing rooms after the game and seeing how it affects everyone at the club, the result, I became a Wednesdayite, and also seeing the fans as well, some of the things they went through over time. I remember being away at Burnley the match after we'd been relegated, and 4,000 fans had still travelled to Burnley, and we won 7-2, and they were amazing. I was thinking, you know, if they can do that after the club's just got relegated, you know, I really want to be around when the good times come back.
Yeah, well, you were partially. You had a promotion from League One. Let's get some stats now. These stats would be perhaps shocking in another football city, but here it's almost just par for the course. Andy Pack, 16 years, am I right, at Sheffield United?
Yeah, full time, and then a year as consultant after that. But I was involved with the club in a previous career. I was still teaching PE in Sheffield, and my way in really was an interest in journalism and an interest in United, and I was doing the programme for United while I was still teaching. But going back to what you said, there were very much the days when a media person was virtually responsible just for doing the programme, because there virtually was no official liaison between clubs and media guys.
And then the clubs decided they wanted to do their own media and kind of sanitise it, all these evils, you know. I won't get these to comment too much about this. It's my hobby horse, and you got in the way of us doing our jobs. No, seriously, I know that
we provided you with jobs.
I know it wasn't you personally. The stats are, in 16 years, Andy Pack, this is 1995 to 2011, he worked with 6 chairmen and 10 managers, and that didn't include 2 caretaker managers, so you can say that's 12. And that's part of the course, I suppose, quite normal. And Steve Chu was telling me he worked for the Owls for 7 years, from August 2000, that was the year that the club dropped from the Premier League, to February 2007. And in his first 2.5 years, you had 4 managers and 3 chairmen. You ended up with 6 managers and still just the 3 chairmen. So it just gives you an idea of how strife-torn the role can be.
Yeah, at times it felt as though there was something going on, you know, every day.
Yeah.
You know, particularly in those first 2 or 3 years when real times of turmoil and financially off the pitch with you know, discord with the fans, and also a team that was really struggling. And as you said, we went through manager after manager to try and turn things around.
The chairmen were Jeff Holley, Howard Cully, Dave Allen,
yeah,
and then shortly after that, I think you might have left when Lee Strafford.
Yeah. I mean, I knew Lee because obviously his company PlusNet had sponsored the club before then.
Yeah.
But I'd gone before he became chairman.
There were massive. We'll come to Andy and some of his issues, not his personal issues, but the club's issues in a moment. But particularly around that time, the word takeover was never far away from publicity around the club. And neither was the name of Ken Bates either for maybe 2 years. How difficult was that time?
Yeah, Ken Bates, I think, was partly responsible for my first grey hair.
He's got more than you.
Yeah. No, I remember the day when he announced his sort of intentions to take over the club quite well, because it was a really busy day. I'd had to finish a programme, which I did sort of by Wednesday mid-afternoon, and then Ken had his press conference at the Hilton at Victoria Keys.
I was there.
About 4:30 in the afternoon, so I raced over to that, got the audio, put it on the website, then went back to Hillsborough, and we had an England under-17 game against Azerbaijan that night, and our stadium announcer wasn't available. So shortly after that, I found myself reading out the Azerbaijan team over the tannoy. So I'd had a day of it. But going back to Ken Bates, you know, I suppose in some ways staff were a bit sheltered from that, in that it was very much a boardroom thing. We'll perhaps talk a bit about Dave Allen and his relationship with the fans, but I think, you know, Dave did a lot for the club that he doesn't get the credit for, and I think holding Ken Bates off was a massive service he did to Sheffield Wednesday.
I'm glad you said that, and I haven't, because I became trapped in the crossfire there, and I certainly agree with you for what it's worth about Dave Allen, but it's the kind of thing that I tend not to talk about now because of that, and let's not reopen that. But we will go back to that, and the various kind of takeover rumours, and they didn't come to fruition, did they? Any of them? There were so many up in the air. Names, Paul Gregg. I've got them written down somewhere. Eventually, of course, the Azerbaijan millionaire, or alleged millionaire, or not at all.
Yeah,
Incredible.
I mean, it's really unsettling, and I suppose all you can do as a member of staff or a manager or a player is just deal with it, do your job. But I suppose it's always there in the background, you know, will the manager still be there if a new chairman comes in? You know, the players he wants to sign, you know, will the manager still be there? So can he sign the players he wants to? So none of that helps. And, you know, every time someone new or something different comes in, there's a period where everyone's learning about each other and it stops the progress.
Yeah. Boardroom has been a big subject as well at Sheffield United from your early days, Andy.
Yeah, I was just thinking while Steve was talking then, in terms of rumour and counter-rumour about takeovers, not had too much of that. The ones that were rumoured did actually take over, and I suppose the only two I can think of that didn't were Carlo Colombotti and Sam Hashimi. Neither of those eventually took over, but yeah, there've been plenty of changes, but most of them came in and did the job to the best or the worst of their ability. I mean, there was Reg Brealey when I first started, and he was a very visionary guy, not a football man in the truest sense, but somebody who commanded a lot of respect from people at the club that I know, from players right up to executives that really liked Reg, and he did a lot for the club. And then there was a bit of a period of change, and internally I think they tried to keep the club with local businessmen who were genuine Sheffield United supporters, dyed-in-the-wool Sheffield people, until Mike McDonald came along. And you know, that was a different kettle of fish altogether.
Yeah, certainly was. Yeah, you could write more than a chapter in a book about him, and I know that you are an author. Keith Edwards' great book, gone down very, very well. And currently Andy's writing one with the Blades legend that is Tony Curry, and hoping to have you back. Talk about that with TC at the time. We'll talk as the programme comes on about individual characters that you've dealt with and how difficult it is to be a chameleon and work with extremes in terms of character. But where do you see your two clubs now? I'll give Andy a little bit more time on this one because it's a harder question to him. Sheffield Wednesday in your time was kind of beset by takeover rumours, or actually encouraged some of them, and eventually the club very, very nearly died in such a different circumstance now, Steve. Yeah,
I mean, on the pitch, certainly last season was amazing for Wednesday and such a turnaround for them. In a way, I worry slightly that they may have missed their opportunity because, you know, I went to Wembley with everyone else last year, and I think we all came away thinking, you know, we were second best on the day, but we've had a good day out, and next time when we come back, we'll go for it. But you look at Newcastle, Villa, Norwich have all come down strong. Brighton, Derby has strengthened. I think QPR will be back there. And
Fulham too. I fancy Fulham. Yeah.
And so I do worry that Wednesday might have missed their chance. And I suppose the worry I have over the ownership is that with owners who are clearly putting in a lot of their own money or money that isn't generated through the club, that's fine all the time they're doing it. But if they lose their interest in it, or like some chairmen have a falling out and want to get out, I do worry that leaves the club slightly vulnerable to, you know, the things that have beset Wednesday in the past. So, you know, my fingers are crossed that progress keeps continuing and that, you know, the chairman doesn't lose interest. But I've got a slight nagging doubt in the back of my mind that if this season isn't what everyone wants it to be, you know, are we going to start going backwards again?
Yeah, I suppose that's the risk a lot of clubs are prepared to take now. It's not just at Hillsborough. You've got very wealthy men in charge of quite a number of clubs around the country. And as you say, generally speaking, as a general point, it's worrying. I detect in Dapon Chansiri at the moment a total commitment. And I don't think he'd want to quit early on that project, even if it didn't go right this season. That's just a personal feeling. But things have changed from the time when Sheffield Wednesday almost couldn't be bought because the shares were so spread, and it had a political problem in that regard. Could it sell itself? To suddenly being owned by one man in Mandarich. who invested. But before that, Dave Allen was the only director in my memory to ever really put his seriously hand in his pocket to put any money in the club, and gifted some.
Yeah.
And now it's gone completely off the graph in terms of what this one's putting in.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think touching on the sort of share ownership, that was a big problem in my time there.
Yeah.
And in a way, what's happened now goes against what the likes of the Owls Trust and the fans group at the time wanted, in that they wanted the club to be owned by the fans. I can understand that sort of from a philosophical point of view, but I think from a point of view of making decisions, getting things done, having a clear direction for a club, it's much better to have a single owner, for better or for worse, and then everyone knows where they're at.
Sheffield United, they know where they're at. Sadly, 6 years in League One and currently bottom of the table. You're a supporter, you've had an inside view. What are your thoughts and theories as to how this has happened?
Just before that, just a couple of things that Steve said were resonant to me. I don't know whether or not this fear of wealthy owners walking away is perhaps something that we reserve for foreign investors, which are obviously becoming more prevalent anyway. And also making the point, of course, that we're Sheffield United are joint owned as well. So you know, we could have the same potential half problem anyway. As to where we are now, you've asked me at a fine time, Alan, haven't you? You say, I mean, it seems bleak at the minute, but, and I'm not saying that this is a straw that United should cling to, but when you think Barnsley and when you think Leicester, this game can change so quickly.
Yeah. You wouldn't recommend the Barnsley route, which is to be bottom at Christmas.
Of course you won't.
But it's far better to be bottom in August.
Absolutely.
Which is the bright side.
That's the way that I look at it. I mean, I hesitate to use the cliches like the club is at a crossroads, but I think it's difficult not to do. You know, the cycle has to finish. What intrigues me is how many times big name managers have been seen to have failed. And a bit like the England international manager's job, we seem to have tried virtually all permutations, old ones, young ones, experienced ones, new ones, and they've all failed. Now,
have they all failed?
To a greater or a lesser degree, they've been deemed to have been failed by being sacked. Now, whether or not that was justified by the board at that particular time will always be a moot point, and supporters who are quick to have their say and to spend other people's money cannot ever, and I say this with respect, know what pressures boards of football clubs and chairmen are under and why they make the decisions they do. It's everybody's job's easier from the outside.
Chris Wilder's in there now. You and I know him pretty well.
Yeah.
I think I didn't hear a dissenting voice about the choice of Chris Wilder at all from anywhere.
No,
but there wasn't about Nigel Adkins.
Exactly. You made my point. Yeah. I mean, I'm pleased they've given Chris the job, and not just because I've known him a long time, and also because he's a Unitedite, but I think after the last 2 or 3 that we've had, maybe David Weir was different because he was only just starting out, but Chris is relatively young, thrusting, recent experience of promotion, whereas obviously Nigel Adkins' promotion experience was getting a little bit long in the tooth, and I just hope that he won't let emotion get in the way. I suspect he won't. I think he can be ruthless, but in a way which footballers will respond to and respect. And I think the players, whether or not they're in his side or not, will respect Chris and Alan Neil. I think they'd be good to work for, and I still have faith in him.
Carlos Carvalho across the city has earned respect, having come as almost an unknown, and not been particularly welcomed by Wednesdayites, but having a sticky patch at the moment, but it's got to be in credit overall, surely, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those who couldn't believe his appointment initially. You know,
Me too.
What were they doing? You know, his first couple of months probably weren't. You know, he was on a sticky wicket, but he came through well. And I think, you know, this early, we're still in August. It's far too early to judge.
Me too. My column was on that. We're going to pick this up in about 5 minutes' time. We wouldn't believe it. Half-time whistle's about to go. Goodness me. Lemon at half-time. Maybe a cup of tea. Look forward to seeing you in 5. See you then. Bye.